Can the King of Thruxton keep his crown, or will the new Virtuoso have his say? This is the Thruxton Preview.
Hello and welcome back to the British Touring Car Podcast. We're back once again. We've got Thruxton this weekend coming up.
Yep.
And as the circus rolls into town, there's been some circus acts going on behind the scenes, haven't there?
There has. You went on holiday, which meant the preview. The review from Snetterton.
My apologies.
Oh, that's not the circus you're talking about. I see.
No.
Sorry, I thought that was the circus you were
I do want to
referring
put my
to.
apologies out there first of all.
Promises were made that were not kept.
Yeah. The accommodation was not as I expected it to be, and the internet connection was abysmal, as you can vouch for with the speed test that I sent you.
Which I received 6 days later, yes. No, in all fairness, promises were made that weren't kept. I presume the lawyers are now involved and trading standards will be informed and all that kind of stuff. But yes, apologies for the slightly late pod. He's not going on holiday this week. It is the first one of the season we're not going to because, and interesting, it's the only track we've not been to on the current calendar because your better half, not me, the other person in your life has a birthday this weekend, which means we have once again been barred from going to Thruxton. However, next year the calendar is slightly tweaked, which means we should.
I think we should
get to
book
Thruxton.
The Airbnb now, just to make sure nothing else can be.
Check the internet speed before we do.
Nothing else can be arranged.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. So as you have alluded to there's been a bit of a circus this week as well, and it involves Team Virtue.
So Senna Proctor will be joining us at Thruxton, coming into
Not
the
us
car.
Personally.
No, coming into the car earlier than expected this season due to the slight hiccup, shall we say, that went on with obviously Bensley taking the seat at Snetterton instead of Michael Crease, and the whole rules and regulations around how many drivers can run on the same TOCA licence per season.
So this all stems from a few years ago, and I can't remember the team. It's quite hard for me to remember what team it was involved. However, basically, there was a period in the touring cars, particularly, and it wasn't just this one team actually, particularly if you look into the early 10s and through the 10s era of lots of guest drivers, TOCA licenses changing hands, you'd have people being brought in for around here, around there, etc. And understandably, I think a lot of people, including the rule makers, felt it cheapened what was supposed to be the top level of tin top racing in the UK.
And sometimes bigger teams would also bring drivers in for single rounds towards the end of the season to boost their points total, especially in the manufacturers and teams championships.
We've seen that in the past.
We've seen less of that nowadays, but there are also regulations that have been brought into place to curb that, shall we say.
Yeah, and of course, with rising costs, it is difficult to get a full season. We understand that. I think that's why they've allowed you're allowed 2 changes on each licence a season, which does allow for what was going to be the Crease and Proctor sort of splits down the middle, and it also allows just a little bit of leeway in case you've got a driver that can't do a weekend because they might have another racing commitment, or they might have a family emergency or something that means they can't race that weekend, and the team can still run a car in their place, which makes sense.
However, more specifically, that same driver cannot step back in. They can step back into the car, but it counts as the second change.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah,
which is the issue that Virtue have found themselves in this weekend. With either they could put Crease back in the car and he could run the rest of the season because that would be the second driver change.
Subject to finance.
Yes, subject to finance. They could have kept Bensley in the car and run up to the midpoint of the season where we're expecting Senna Proctor to take over that car. Or,
subject to finance.
Or they can bring Proctor in early, which is what they have decided to do. And he will, as far as we know, stay with the team till the end of the season, subject to finance.
Yeah, so, I mean, the official quote was this. Obviously, we know that from Snetterton, you might not be at full up speed of the review as of yet, but we know... Yep, it's out for now. Yep. But we do know, obviously, that Bensley's stepped into the car at Snetterton. It was his home round. He's a long-time backer of Michael Crease. And as a little bit of a favour, a little bit of a reward, however you want to splice it, he came in for that round. This I'm now reading the statement. This strategy, which was agreed by and suited Crease and the team commercially, but a misunderstanding in regards to the number of allotted driver changes, means the team has now brought forward Proctor's deal to begin this weekend. That's the quote. And I have to say, I find it hard to... we can't dispute it because it's an official statement, so we cannot dispute what they have said.
The ball.
However, I personally do find it hard to believe that a top team wouldn't know the rules, and if they didn't, I find it even more surprising they didn't check the rules before doing the change. However, we can't really go any further than that because that is what the official statement is.
Yeah.
It does raise a lot of questions.
Drop the ball at the very least.
Yeah.
or a hell of a lack of foresight.
And it's a shame for Crease, who obviously only had the half-season deal anyway. And whatever you think of the situation, Crease has now lost his drive for the rest of the season, which is a shame. He will be in and around the team, presumably as a reserve driver in case they need to swap out any of the other three due to illness or anything like that. And of course, there'll be a view in his mind to return to the grid in 2026.
I was going to say, it's not all bad news on his side. At least he's there or thereabouts with the team. And hopefully he'll be in a place where he can gain understanding of the car and possibly get enough funding together to come back for next season.
For Senna, though, it's a good opportunity for him to come forward a couple of races early, which is great news for him. Great to see him back on the grid as well, a race winner and someone who certainly came to the grid very young and took the grid by storm. So it'd be good to see what he can do this weekend. Dare I say, if I'm being open and honest, it's potentially an upgrade on, particularly as we're getting into part of the season where it already looks like it's a 2-horse or 2.5 horse race.
It's not that small.
It could be decent for Virtue to have a driver who can run at the front. I mean, obviously he's been out with the sport for a couple of years, so we need to see where he's at. And
certainly going to have a settling in period, isn't he?
And there's a better circuit I would wager to have that than Thruxton, which is
in at the deep end.
Although there is only really one braking zone at Thruxton, which might make it slightly easier for him, as I will come to in my circuit preview in a moment. So yeah, I'm interested to see what Proctor can do. I don't think this weekend is what people will need to judge him on. However, I do think he'll come in and do quite well. But yeah, as I say, he is back for this weekend. And as the season ramps up and as the championship draws on, it could be good to have him in the Virtue ranks for their title bids.
Yeah, as you say, he is a race winner. I think he's one of the top 3 youngest winners in the sport as well. And the time that he's spent in the sport, he's always performed really quite well and consistently. It's just, unfortunately, a struggle for funding, which meant he hadn't been able to compete recently. But it does look like he could be back on the right tracks.
Is it a coincidence, do you think, that during the hybrid era, people found it harder to find the money to come together to race, and that since that's gone, it's become a little bit easier?
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
I do think that is obviously the main push factor behind drivers like him coming back into it, but also the fact of Gal going, right, we've done with the hybrid now, we're going to move on to something else. I think he saw the pound signs and the lack of uptake and needed to make some adjustments, shall we say.
You wait till next year and we have to run wets in one race, regardless of what goes on. Right, should we get on to Thruxton itself? And that is the only sort of news off the track. So Thruxton, the Festival of, well, not Festival of Speed, sorry, that's a completely different thing.
Goodwood.
It is Goodwood. The fastest track in the UK. I think it's the fastest track in Europe as well. If it's not, it's certainly among the fastest tracks in Europe. 11 corners, 2.37 miles. So one of the middle range circuits. As I mentioned there, there's only really one braking zone, which is the final braking zone into the chicane. Although I suppose you might need to dab the brakes at church if you if you need to. Debuted in the series in 1968. You've actually done some research this week, which is biblical.
I haven't done that much.
I mean, it's more than usual. So, but based on that, do you know who holds the qualifying lap record?
I'm going to assume it's probably from 2023 because Napa are all really quick. So I'm going to go Sutton.
No.
Okay.
And I was actually quite surprised by this. So it's actually 2020.
Oh.
It's not been beaten in the hybrid era, which is surprising.
Is it a Honda then?
It was Dan Camish, 1:15.2. And the race record?
If that hasn't been beaten since then, I'm going to go same year, 2020.
2024.
Okay.
And it was Ash Sutton on a 1:15.7. So, yeah, which is interesting. That's only half a second difference between.
I'm amazed that qualifying lap record stands from then.
Yeah, I am as well, actually. When I was doing my research, as I tend to do, I mean, it's quite a good thing to do for the preview pods. I was surprised that hasn't been beaten since 2020, particularly given we're in this era of potentially quicker racing.
Weather depending, I think that goes this weekend.
Yeah, I would agree. What I would potentially say, just to slightly temper out why it might not have changed, of course, is that the fastest guys, by the time we get to Thruxton, will be reduced on boost and stuff like that, which might have an implication to why they can't necessarily go as fast, because you'd be expecting your Suttons, your Ingrams, your Hills to have broken that record, or your Cooks, but they're generally in a championship fight and they've generally lost some time or some boost, shall we say.
The ability to run at full power.
Exactly. If we look at 2024 then, Ingram took pole position, and then race 1 was Hill, Camish, Sutton in the official results. Ingram did win on the road, but was knocked back. I think he had some seconds put onto his race time for a collision with Camish. Race 2 was Hill, Camish and Ingram. And then race 3 was Sutton, Camish and Ingram. So that top end didn't really change a lot throughout the weekend. If you look at the potentially 4 title contenders, because we're trying to keep it exciting. Sutton last year, a 3rd, a 5th and a 1st. Ingram, a 4th after judicial review, a 3rd and a 3rd. Hill, a win and a 5th. And Camish had a 2nd, a 2nd and a 2nd.
So consistent. And I think that's what we're going to find again this weekend, because Thruxton, as you may or may not know already, will be running only the hard tyre this weekend. So there won't be any of that chopping and changing, falling through the pack like we've seen in the last 2 rounds with that change of tyre.
Unless, of course, it rains, when they will be using the wets, just for absolute clarity. And the reason we have to go hard at Thruxton is, Sam?
Punches.
Absolutely.
Which, well, it might take part in our predictions a little bit later on. Looking at the weather for Saturday, we might get a little bit of rain during qualifying.
We said this last week.
Which may be interesting. I've got mid-30s in percentage of chance.
Okay.
But it does look like Sunday is going to be nice and dry all the way through for all 3 races.
Very good indeed. Talking of all 3 races, we'll quickly do the timetable, and then we'll look at the current standings coming into the weekend, and we'll have a general chit-chat before moving to our predictions. So once again, we've got a slightly reduced timetable, unfortunately. It's just going to be yeah, absolutely. If you are one of the autograph hunters that are going this weekend, the pit lane walkabout is the first thing. It's actually 10 o'clock till 10:30. It really annoys me on these weekends. Why not make it like 9, half 9 till 10:30? Do an hour.
It's because the drivers don't want to get up.
Well, all right, well, yeah, but it's frustrating. Anyway, then you've got the Porsche Carrera Cup. The first touring car race is 11:45, so we haven't actually had to get up too early on Sunday, which is nice. Then I've got the Minis, then lunch. We've got the F4s, touring cars at 25 to 3, Porsches, Minis, and then touring cars at 5:05. So again, no racing after the touring cars. That is a fairly small calendar, as ever, as it seems this season.
Yes. Obviously, King of Croft, Josh Cook, there again in a Honda again this year. Be interesting to see how he goes. However, I don't think it's going to be as well as he could have done sort of like in recent seasons.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one on that front, because there's a couple of teams that have not really hit the heights they'd have hoped. I think One Motorsport is one of them. Obviously, you have to factor in that they've been away for a year, and they've lost a year of development, and the rules have changed from when they were last in the series, so they've got to adapt to that. However, I've been slightly underwhelmed by their return. I don't think the cars are particularly competitive. Certainly not in Jelly's hands, if I'm being brutally honest. No. Cook has not even been able to do Cook things and gets 6th. You know, he's sort of just not been about, which is a bit of a shame. And I think Toyota as well is another one that they really need to have a good weekend as well. It's I'm not convinced, because again, it's a circuit for the speed, which is the one thing they seem to lack. However, Aaron Taylor-Smith and Shedden have both gone well round this circuit in the past. If Shedden can stay away from errant Max Halls, then there's a good chance he might be able to score some points. But yeah, personally, I don't really see anything other than a Hyundai versus Ford battle this weekend. But the big question mark is over BMW, isn't it? Because obviously, mid at Donington, really good at Brands, awful at Snetterton.
Yeah.
Thruxton's a little bit more like Brands. I mean, it's not, but it's a bit more like Brands. Snetterton and Donington are similar. Brands and Thruxton are similar.
I think weather is going to play a big part. If they can get the tyres working, get them up to temperature, and get that setup nailed on, then they could be the ones to beat, in all honesty. There's a sneaky suspicion that I don't think that will happen, especially with how good Napa and Virtue are at the moment and have been. Although, apart from England's win on the road, they haven't actually taken a victory at Thruxton.
They haven't. It's the only track that the Accelerate team haven't taken a win at, which is surprising. I say this weekend for me is all going to be about power, and that Hyundai Beast for me is going to take some stopping. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a restart chap on the podium at some point either, and not just for their independent class win, because I just think it's going to be a circuit that's going to suit the Hyundai. But as you've quite rightly said, if the BMW can get itself into that window, Hill has always gone well here. Obviously took a double win last year. I remember one year where he was on the wrong tyre, which poured down the rain, and I think he finished on the podium or certainly in top five.
Held on really well.
Keeping back, top drivers on the right tyre. So he's no slouch around here. The BMW has gone well around here in the past, but I just don't know what to expect from the BMW machinery this year. They have been inconsistent, and that's
hot and cold, isn't it?
Well, that's why when you look at the championship standings, it's Sutton at the top on 132. It's Ingram on 117, which is already quite a gap, to be honest with you, given that you wouldn't necessarily say Ford are that much better than Virtue.
No. And Sutton is the only driver with a double win so far this season,
and
must add.
Then Hill is back on 92, which is 40 points off, which is 2 wins off already. And obviously I know a lot can change in the Touring. We know it can change, but that's a big gap already, isn't it? Particularly when you're up against Sutton, who just scores points relentlessly.
And consistently top six.
Well, he's top 3, isn't he? I mean, he's a level above Colin in a way, because obviously Colin was the perfect person of always scoring the points. Sutton does that, but at a level where it's top 3, top 3. The run, he puts runs together where he's just podium. 4th, 5th, podium.
I must say, Ingram seems to be doing that.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
He hasn't taken a win yet. Could this be the weekend where we see that happen? I'm amazed that he hasn't taken a win yet. He has been so consistent with those podium finishes.
I do wonder if there'll come a point, I don't think it'll be this weekend, where he has to be a little bit more aggressive in overtaking, particularly if he's against someone like Sutton, because I know at the minute Sutton is certainly more aggressive on Ingram than Ingram is on Sutton, I think. I don't think that's particularly controversial to say.
I think we saw that from the move at Snetterton down the inside into
and obviously Agostini. Sutton gave the plate, or made sure he gave the place. We also saw it at Donington, where he overtook under yellow and gave the place back. So, but I do think, I don't want to get into Max Verstappen comparisons because he's nowhere near that level of.
We'll leave that.
Yeah, we'll leave that. We'll park that, like he did into the side of Russell. But we'll park that. But I do think there'll come a time where Ingram might have to be a little bit more zesty in going after Sutton if he is in front.
Yeah, we'll see. Shall we get on to some predictions then for the weekend?
We will do after this short interlude break. Just like a wet tyre helps in those tricky, slippery conditions, a like and a bell on, is it how you say bell on YouTube?
Yeah.
There you go. Really helps the podcast, doesn't it, Sam?
Yeah, you can also drop a comment below or leave a review on any of our podcast locations. We're on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts from. And we're also on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you want to find us, basically. Just go and search BTCP or British Touring Car Podcast and you should find us.
Right, back to the preview. So yeah, coming into the predictions then, it is 8-all. I had a stonking Snetterton that brought me right back into contention.
You pulled it back a little bit, haven't you? I had a good first weekend and I've been lacklustre since then, so it's time to step it up once
absolutely.
again.
We'll start with the actual, the polls and all that kind of stuff. So if you're new watching or listening to us, we do a poll, 3 race winners in any order. We did used to do it race 1 to 3, but that was completely and a Jack Sears winner as well.
Do leave yours down below as well, because we love to hear your predictions, however mad, bonkers or sensible they seem to be.
And before, not after the fact, it's all very well going after, well, this team performed well, you got that wrong. Yes, let's see what you think.
It's a bit of fun.
Indeed. Right. Who's going to get pole position on Saturday, Sam?
It's Dan Camish. Again.
Yeah, okay.
Top of the Wingfoot Award. Got a decent,
the one they want to win.
Decent amount of boost to still propel him along fairly well. And we know how well the Napa Ford goes here. So, Dan Camish for me.
Darryl de Leon. Now,
sorry, I thought you said Darryl de Leon.
Allow me to state my case.
In the BMW?
Yes.
Okay, right.
The BMW this weekend will either be awesome or awful. And I'm going for awesome based on the fact that I think it's a track that's not dissimilar to Brands Hatch. That is what I'm banking on. De Leon will have a lot of boost available to him, the maximum amount, because he's not in the title fight.
All your eggs going in this basket?
No, I'm splitting the races later on because I think he would probably have to move over anyway. But I think that in the way we saw the BMWs do really well at Brands, I think we can see him go really well here. It's also a circuit, and this is another bit of my reasoning, as I've said multiple times during the podcast, it's a circuit about speed. De Leon's speed and raw pace is unbelievable. There's not many on the grid that I think are faster on sheer pace than De Leon. I really don't. That's how he got into the sport in the first place, because of how he blew everybody out of the water in that hard scholarship. So that's why I'm going for De Leon. Though I can understand the Camish, and you're probably more likely,
more sensible, I think.
Yeah.
More logical, and that's why I've gone for him for a race win as well. Because I think if you take pole round Thruxton, as long as you get a good start, you'll probably go off and take a race win in race 1 as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I've gone for my first race winner to be Jake Hill. Again, I think the BMW is going to be good here this weekend. I'm not going
all in.
Well, Jake Hill goes very well here. That's not a debate. So, if any of the BMWs are going to win, I think it will be Hill.
Okay, I've gone for Ingram. I think they'll get that monkey off their back and take a win for Virtue. It could be any of them, really, but Ingram's going to be the one to back.
Well, I also think they'll get the monkey off their back this weekend. That's why I've gone for Chilton, because he is the one that's taken the race win already this year.
Yes, he has.
And I just feel if he can keep himself in the reverse grid hunt for race 3, one thing you can say about Chilton is once he gets out in front, he's very rarely beaten. And I can just see a reverse grid, and it's quite funny that Ingram is their best driver, but statistically, and yet he's not the one that's taken the win. Actually, you'd argue Morgan's been close to a win at points this year as well than Ingram. So interesting to see.
And we've also both gone for Ash Sutton, which
you don't rule him out, do you?
Kind of have to, really.
Yeah, you don't rule him out, do you?
It's a safe bet. For Jack Sears, though, we've gone different.
We have.
We've gone interesting. So you've gone for Rainford.
The BMW basket is full of these eggs.
Full, please. I've
been harvesting. Yeah.
I've gone for Osborne this weekend. I thought he performed really well at Snetterton.
Yeah, I agree with you on that.
Really nice and consistent. And if he can carry that consistency on, I think in the Ford he will just have a little bit more than everyone else in that Jack Sears class.
So congratulations, Max Hall, this weekend's
Ronan Pearson.
This weekend's Jack Sears winner.
Yes.
Okay, so then the general predictions then. And my first general prediction is that Smiley will be the overall winning independence driver this weekend. Okay. So over the 3 races, he'll take the most points in the independent class.
That wouldn't surprise me too much, especially with the restart I've had.
Yeah.
If they continue that form on, which I think they should here, I think they'll do well.
Although I think his main competitor will be Dobble this weekend. Doble rather. Is it Dobble? It's Doble. Doble. I do think his main competitor will be Doble this weekend. That every time we think, will the Vauxhall go well around here? Yes, is the answer. It goes around well everywhere. So Doble will be the chap, I think, that runs him the closest.
I was having a look at the Vauxhall results from last season. They're not overly brilliant.
No, but Crease had a really good result here a couple of seasons ago in the Astra. We've got to remember that Astra's now been in the sport for about 17 years.
Keep saying that, and it still keeps performing.
Yeah, but I think both him and Hand had a decent showing at Thruxton, albeit that's going back a little bit into the BTCC vault. Your first prediction?
We are going to have a double race winner this weekend.
Sorry, a double
race winner. So more likely race 1 and 2 rather than 1 and 3 or 2 and 3. But I think we're going to see it happen this weekend just because of the linear position we're going to be in with tyres.
So funnily enough, I had that as a prediction, but you got there first for a change. You actually did your predictions rather than doing it in my front room before we come in here.
I'll tell you what, when we don't have a double winner, you're going to be so grateful for me.
I am indeed, yeah. But rather than scrolling on a fag packet last minute, you actually did this ahead of time. So yeah, I because of that, I changed mine. So I'm going for no podium, but a top 6 for Cook.
Okay, in any of the 3 races.
Any of the 3 races, yeah. Obviously, if he gets a podium in any of them, I'm rather skewered. But I don't think he will get a podium this weekend. I just don't think the Honda is at a level to challenge. I think when you've got 4 Hyundais and 4 Fords capable of taking a podium, and then you'd argue 4 BMWs all capable of taking a podium as well, you've then got 12 cars you've got to beat to a podium. And I don't see that.
It puts him quite far down the list.
It does, because I think you then put the other 2 Hyundais in as well, and suddenly that it's very difficult to get onto that podium. But I do think he'll score a top 6.
You might have to wait for a race 3 on that one. I feel a reverse grid might pull him back up there, and I am going all in on Ford and Hyundai this weekend, and they are going to be on every single podium.
Well, you have got how many cars are on the grid? 25, isn't there?
Yes.
So you've almost got a half chance of that. Given there's 10.
It's a third.
There's 10. Because presumably that Hyundai can mean, that can mean. Well, we'll clarify it now.
No, it does.
But presumably that also means team restart, does it?
Yes.
Yeah. It definitely does. Now I think about it, of course it does. Fool. Yes. Yeah. So, and again, to clarify, that's the outright podium. So having Dan Lloyd lifting the independent trophy would not count for the
outright podium. 1, 2, 3 in either of the 3 races.
Fair enough. And I'm going for the race 1 and race 2 podium will be the same drivers, albeit they might be in a different order. Okay. So
we've seen that happen quite often.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes even in the same order as well.
Yeah. I'm going to be so annoyed on race 1 and race 3 of that one. And race 2 is the carnage race, and race 3 is the same as race 1. But there we go.
And then my final one is we're going to see a puncher this weekend, at least one, and not due to crash damage, due to wear or curb hit or something like that, not where 2 drivers have come together and the tyres come off the rim. And just to clarify everything.
And further to clarify, this is only in the touring cars, because if you get a puncture in the Porsches, you can't punch the air and wake me up and go, Russell, look, puncture. Cool. And we may have mentioned during the podcast that Proctor is back this weekend, so we're going to go for Proctor points. Yeah, how well is he going to do?
Excited to see him back this weekend, but as we've already mentioned, I do think it's going to be quite a steep learning curve into a brand new car for him. The cars are probably going to feel a lot different to the last time he was in series.
Not quite brand new, because he has driven the Hyundai in the past, don't forget.
Yeah, but we'll see. So, I am going for 8.
8 points, okay.
I know it kind of feels low, but as you've already mentioned, there are 4 Fords, 6 Hyundais, BMWs.
Sounds like a GCSE maths paper, doesn't it? The Btcc has 4 Fords and 6 Hyundais. Alan Gow says you can't have.
That can all take up plenty of the points position. So, yeah, I'm going for a conservative 8.
Yeah, I'm going for 17. I believe in Proctor. Ooh. Yeah, I believe in Proctor. That's 2 tenths and a lower order in the top 15. I think he gets 3 top 15. I think he scores in all 3 races, personally, unless he gets into a crash. I think he's quicker than, when you look at some of the drivers he'll have to pass. If presuming he qualifies down there anyway, I think he's certainly quicker than a good number of drivers. Yes.
One thing I'm going to put into your mind that you may not have even thought about, do you think he's going to run the same livery as what was on Crease's car?
This weekend, yes.
He will run more of a Morgan-esque livery.
I presume he'll have his own sponsors. So I think to answer the question, it's going to depend on how quickly has this decision been made, because obviously they're going to have to rewrap the car. So it wouldn't surprise me if he ran Creasy's livery this weekend and then changed it going into Alton Park, which is obviously a couple of weeks down the line. However, I don't really know how long it takes to wrap these cars. We did see in the pit lane at Donington that with the Toyotas, Snet, that the Toyotas come out basically with blank body panels, and they spray paint and apply the stickers on. So yeah, I think it's just going to depend, isn't it?
I think he will be in his own livery. I think they would have sorted a livery from the start of the season, having known that he was coming in halfway through. So I think we will see a completely different livery to what Crease was running.
It depends on the sponsors, though, doesn't it? If they are putting the money on, because otherwise it's free advertising, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
I also wonder whether he will look more like the Morgan in that deeper blue, or whether he will go down the Crease route of having his own very specific livery. That's the only thing I have a question over.
Again, I think it depends entirely on what sponsors are backing him and what's on the table. Obviously, in the past, he's been in sort of grey and pink in the... He did try, and he did do the Hyundai for a season, didn't he? I'm not making that up. I'm sure he did. In the Draper Tools one, didn't he?
It doesn't feel familiar to me.
Obviously, he's done PMR as well in the past. I'm going to have to look that up while we're talking.
Btcc Norlin.
Yeah.
In the Astra with Cook. In the... was that a Mag Tools? No,
he was in the Subaru for a while, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. It'll be interesting to see how he performs this weekend. But I do think by the end of the season, we could even see him getting a podium and possibly even a win.
As I say, former teams Accelerate Motorsport, which would suggest to me he did compete in the... Yes. He was with Tom Chilton for a while.
Oh, lovely.
So I'm going to assume he must have... Oh, no, was that with PowerMaxed? Oh, gosh. This is not helpful at all. We'll get some clarification. You're going to have to edit something into the pod afterwards, whether he did race it or not.
Yeah, we'll catch you up with all of that in the review, which will be coming, and I assure you, will be coming on Tuesday next week. Let us know your thoughts and feelings going into Thruxton. As I said, we will be on the sofa watching this weekend, but I'm quite looking forward to a sofa weekend, must I say.
Me too. He was in the Hyundai. I'm sure. Oh, this is really... I've just seen a picture of him in a mask, which makes me think he was in a Hyundai. Yes, I'm looking forward to being on the sofa. Yes, he was. Draper Tools. I was correct. Look at that. Yes, which might mean might be a Morgan one being the Draper Tools one.
Yeah.
Back to the sofa. Yes, on the sofa. We've got a curry afterwards, would be nice. And because we'll be at your house, presumably this weekend, is your job to provide snacks and lunch and whatnot. So I look forward to being waited on hand and foot by your lovely girlfriend on her birthday as you sit on the sofa demanding what.
I don't think she'll be there.
No. Oh, even.
But yes, we'll catch up with the review, and until then, stay safe, and we'll be back with you again soon.
Enjoy the racing.